Good morning, good afternoon. Sorry, it's good afternoon, isn't it? Today I'm going to talk to you about paper, and I brought each of you a pack of paper. Before I hand it out, I want to make one particular remark about it, and that is don't handle the paper unnecessarily. When you do, handle it at the edges rather than in the middle. So don't put your hand bang in the middle of the damn thing. Your hand has oils in it, and they can create a mark which resists paint, which is fine, but not if you don't want the paint to be resisted there. Okay, so be very careful. So don't take anything out yet. Just delight in having a present. I've got some left over for them as isn't here. Right. Now, papers come in, are made in different ways. Up to now, most of what you have done is probably on Bockingford or Langford paper, which is made from wood pulp commercially. So it's wood pulp, and it's created using a roller system so that they can get the lengths that they want to cut it in the shapes and sizes that they want. Before I go any further, there's nothing the matter with that. That's good, because as long as it's watercolor paper and been properly sized, it will accept the paint nicely for you. And it is Bockingford and Langford are probably the cheapest forms of good quality watercolor paper you can get, but there is such a lot more that you can explore. So I have introduced you to some other papers. In that little pack, you have Bockingford Rough. Now, that again is a watercolor paper made from wood pulp, done commercially with rovers and other systems. They create the random texture on the rough paper by running it through felt rollers, so that the pressure gives a different random pattern to the surface of the paper. And this is an advantage when you're painting watercolor. Other papers are very often made from cotton or cotton linen mixes, using the fibers from the threads, and that produces a more absorbent paper. Again, generally speaking, they're handmade, or at least made commercially like a handmade paper, so that you get a very random texture on it. And finally, there are papers that are made of cotton rag as such. And those are the really best quality papers you can get these days. So 100% cotton rag paper. So they take offcuts and, tear them to pieces sort of thing and create the fibers out of that. Right, so that's a bit about how papers are made. So if you look at your little pack, take it out from the packet now, and remember, touch the edges if you have to look at them. You'll find you've got, I've written on the bottom of them here what they are in pencil, lightly, just on the bottom. You've got Arches HP, Two Rivers, Arches Rough, Bockingford Rough, and Cardi paper. Okay, right. So what I want to show you is some of the advantages of rougher paper. When you're, I don't need to do anything yet, just sort of listen if you would be so kind. When you're painting with a rough paper, I better get a dark paint so that it shows. The thing about the rough paper is that the little hills and valleys on the surface are deeper or higher, depending on what you're looking at. So you can, if you have not a lot of water on your brush, or if you move very fast, you can just hit the top of the hills, so to speak. So you get a broken appearance to the painting. Of course, it's not going to happen, is it? I'll do it. So we'll try it anyway. Here we are. So if I go like that, there we are. Well, that's showing it nicely, isn't it? I'm using the side of the brush, just swooping it across. Can you see how it's hitting some of the surface of the paper and missing other parts of it? So if you were wanting to suggest that you've got a picture of a girl running along the beach, you want her skirt to appear to move, if you can make the edge of the skirt broken like this, it just gives an appearance of movement to it. The other thing about it is, because of this random effect, if you're doing something and you just want to sort of create the idea of somebody walking along the street, he's got long arms. Poor fella. There we are. The broken effect is also very good for suggesting light catching the surface of a sleeve or the edge of a leaf or anything like that. And these different papers will give you different aspects of that. Now, if you use the paint wetter, it will, of course, do the normal. You get the normal effect of watercolor paper. You can turn from the normal effect to a broken edge if that's what you want to do. So that's the particular advantage of the rough papers that we've got. Okay, now what I want you to do is to take one of the papers only. I'm going to tell you which one, and to use that to create a painting of one or two of your leaves. So if I go through the mechanics of painting a leaf with you, that would help. What I'm going to choose is the Bockingford Rough. That's the nearest thing to what you recognize as paper normally. This is what you've used before. This is just one step further, if you like, in the use of papers. Different papers are good for different ways of painting. The idea of presenting you with all of these is that you can find the one that suits your style of painting best by having a go at all of them. Now, if you're like Anne here, she does a lot of pencil work. So she will probably find the hot pressed paper is best because it's very, very smooth. Hot pressed merely means that it has been squeezed tight between hot rollers so that all the moisture is and pattern is driven out and it's absolutely smooth surface. So it's very good for pencil work. It's also very good for botanical work where you're working very finely and you need to be absolutely precise in what you're doing. There is a piece there, and we will get to it eventually. The thing about hot press paper is it's not very absorbent. So if you put on a wash, it tends to sit on top of the paper for a good long while before it sinks into the paper. So again, courses for courses, you've got to choose the paper for the style of painting you're about to indulge yourself in. Right, so if I take the Bockingford, I remember Bockingford is wood pulp based. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a cheaper, less absorbent way of producing paper than the cotton ones. Right, so I better get a leaf and have a go, hadn't I? If I take this one, can you see that, Rachel? Yes. Okay. Right. Now, go and take the money off. Getting hot. Okay. Being left-handed, I'll have it over here. Right. Now, Um, right, what I'm going to do is to start with the pattern on the surface. If you look at the pattern on the surface of this leaf, it looks very hit and miss, just like I want it to look. So instead of painting the surface of the leaf first, if I had time to paint it and let it dry, I would do that. I'm going to do it the other way around now. I'm just going to take the darker color, represents the mottling on the leaf, and see if I can create that using the brush and the paint. So I think we'll start with burnt sienna. I might add, this is an experiment for me. I've not done it before. I don't generally go around painting leaves. I have done it. It actually is quite fascinating. But I haven't done it in public, so that's not makes a difference. Now, you want to make sure that you haven't got too much paint on the brush. You might want to mop some of the water out just to see how you can get on. Okay, so I've got that area there. You can see it's hitting and missing quite nicely, actually. Take that up there. And then there's a bit down here. And because of that, it can be quite directional too. So you can create the forms that you want and the way that you want it. You want to come and watch? If the rest of you want to get up and come and watch, you can come and frighten me if you like. Right? So notice that I'm not drawing the leaf when I'm painting. I'm using the side of the brush to create shapes that I'm finding interesting. It's just turning out better than I feared. What's going on here? Now I can go back in there, taking a different color. There's a bit of, this might not work because it's probably damp. Sorry, just checking. It's a bit damp in places. Right. No, it's not going to work there. But I can take that. There's quite a deep shadow here. There's a really deep shadow here. So I can work on top of what I've got here. Again, creating that shape that I'm after. It's quite a nice effect. At least I like it. I don't know about you. Well, there's a bit of green in there too. Unfortunately, it's a sort of well, there's a better picture of blue. That's right, isn't it? Right, there's a bit of green here on the underside. I think this is a more interesting leaf than that one, actually. Just improve, yeah. I do it all the time, you know. Do it all the time. Right. But you can see the effect that it has. Green. That's the point. Now, if I want to create a shape with a bit more solidity to it, all I've got to do is increase the pressure. So I'm going to use raw sienna to create this bit here, which is quite a solid shape. There's a piece around here too. And there's a bit over here. I think the raw sienna was the wrong color, but never mind, we make these mistakes. I think it will probably be subsumed. That's the right word for it. Right, if we take that color. Okay, so I've made a mistake. Right, what can I do about it? Well, the whole leaf is actually basically yellow. So if I do that, that hit and miss business that I did before is now getting covered with the yellow. So we're getting more of the picture, the shape of the leaf, with that exciting shape and pattern that we've created before. Put them up here. I've got a bit of curly bit here. Right, now, what I need now is some darks in there. Oh, my stalk, of course. Don't make a performance out of the stalk. Do it as a gesture. Doesn't matter if it's not like that, as long as it says stalk, which is good. So I want to get some real darks in there now. I'm going to go back into the brown. Mix it with the red. And now a bit of blue. Oh, that's far too dark. Right. See what we get there. That's not the right color either. This is called trying to hurry. Calm down, Steve. Start again. Yeah. But that's the brown. Now show the brush the blue. There's the blue. That's that. Okay, we'll use that for a start. I can see dark shadows here. There's a dark shadow here. There's a dark shadow there. Dark shadows happen where the leaf curls over. That creates a problem. Into the darkness there. Right, I think that's about as far as I want to go for Fultons. If I play on with it, I'll only make it worse. But it has made the thing I want you to find out is this hit and miss effect that you get with rough papers. When we go into the other papers, which are more expensive, you'll have some idea of the technique that's going to help to do it. So those of you who are going to be away on holiday and not going to be able to take part, what you need to do is to just use the papers in turn and try to take note of what happens. Does it absorb the water quickly or slowly? Does it give you this hit and miss dry brush effect if you have your brush dry enough? Does it work better with one thing rather than another? Does it have a side? Is one side of the paper more effective and useful than the other? I've got some information here about some of the papers. I'm going to put it upstairs, up on the stage. This is Two Rivers paper, which Rachel and I bought when we went on the sketch fair, because they make the paper there. And this will tell you how the paper was made. And you can actually buy it online. But I got 6 sheets, about that size, for £10. So it's expensive. Yeah, I would think so, yes. Arch, this is arch, or arch, depending on what you want to call it. Just put it under the microscope. Some people call it arch. It is a French company. Some people call it arches because that's what it looks like. Okay, now this is aquarelle, so it's a particular kind of watercolor paper, and it says rough. So you can get arch, which isn't rough, but I usually buy the rough. I like that hit and miss. I think it makes it look more watercolory, more immediate, more accidental, if you like. Whereas if you're doing botanical, then what you want is the hot press paper, which is around here somewhere. When you see it, you'll see just how smooth it is. Very, very smooth. You can see you would need that if you needed to be very precise with your details, or if you work that way. You know, if you normally do little things and you're absolutely millimeter correct with everything you do. Or if you use pencil, it works with pencil beautifully. And because it's a watercolor paper, you can use watercolor pencils and wet them a bit afterwards without. So it's strong enough to take the wet. It just doesn't accept a wash very easily. But if you're working with watercolor pencil and then wet it, then of course you're not soaking it quite the same way, so it will work quite well. So that's what I wanted to take away when you're looking at it. If you really want to know more about paper, Jackson's Art Supplies have a book which you can buy for 12 quid, which will tell you all about the watercolor papers, how they're made, what they're made of, who makes them, and all the other information that you need to know about it, depending on how much you want to go into that. Yourself, I think using them tells you more. Okay. Bockingford Rough is made of wood pulp. Arch is made of cotton. It says they're 100% cotton. And the cotton papers are more expensive than the wood pulp papers. The wood pulp's the normal way we make paper. But the other thing is, one of them is vegan. Now, which one is it? If you're that way inclined, Cardi paper. This is the one that Hazel absolutely adores Cardi paper. And this is also vegan. So if you're very, very fussy about things that you use and saving the planet and all that kind of thing, this is probably the one. These are not wildly expensive. They're handmade in India, that one, Cardi paper. And they've got quite commercial in the way they do it now, in the sense that they're able to produce papers in different sizes. When I first bought it, I bought a big sheet, A1 size sheet, and cut it up into sizes. But you can now get little ones that are just this size, but they've made this size. You can tell it's handmade by looking at the edge. There, you can see that's an edge.
So that one came like that size.
No, you can see I've cut it. I've torn it actually. But yes, they are handmade. Even the big sheets are handmade. But the little ones are much more useful because they're there little. You don't have to tear it up. So there we are. Any more questions?
And the leaf, did you start with that on the drawing paper?
Yes. Well, I did this one. If I was, I think even if I was doing it at home, I'd have done that, because the minute you start to wet it, it loses the bumps a bit. You don't get the same effect. So what I did was to put the pattern on and then paint the leaf on afterwards, which you can do without losing the pattern, because if it's dry, it will move. Right. So, any other questions? Well, take the Bockingford rough and see, put your others back in the packet gently. Don't touch the edge, only touch the edge, and see how you get on painting your leaf, individual leaves with Bockingford rough.